It's Monday night, and we're sharp.
Newest edition of The Cut here on January 13th, 2025. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, guys. Couldn't have done it without our sponsor over at Cracked Repair, CRAKD Repair.com. Go there or visit Anthony in the Ashtabula Town Square so you can get all your phone, all your electronic repairs done right there. If you need a quote, you can go right to the website, put in your phone, put in the issue that you're having. It's going to give you an estimate on what it might cost you and give you a time frame of when it could be done. So go on over to crackedrepair.com. They service all phones, iPads, everything of the sort. You'll be able to get in there. Anthony's requesting a quote online right there. Put in the phone number is 440-867-5309, and it goes to Jenny. That's a little Tommy Two-Tone prank for you guys. But hey, thanks for joining us in here, guys. Super appreciate it. Super appreciate our sponsor at Crack Productions for putting this on tonight. Appreciate my producer, Anthony, working in the back to do everything that he does. Thank you, Anthony.
You're welcome.
Oh, thank you, sir. So tonight, I lost audio in my headset. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the college football playoff, which had gone on this past weekend. Penn State versus Notre Dame in a thriller, and then Ohio State and Texas in an absolute thriller as well. We're going to talk about my national championship game predictions, how I steered a little bit wrong in those predictions going into the bracket season when we did an episode with our buddy Nate Winchell a couple weeks ago. Then we're going to move into some NFL playoffs. We're going to talk about the games that occurred over the weekend, not necessarily in chronological order, but I have a method to my madness. I'm excited to go over all that with you guys today. So we're going to hop right into the thick of it. We're going to talk about Penn State and Notre Dame. Penn State falls to the Catholics, the score of 24-27. It was a hard-fought battle till the end. It literally came down to the final minutes of the game. So final minutes of the game, Drew Allar dropping back to pass, throws an interception to Christian Gray of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Now, as you guys can see kind of on the board here, it was a pretty even game all throughout the game, even going into the fourth quarter. Absolutely wild. Penn State and Notre Dame have very different offenses and very different quarterbacks. So Notre Dame really, for the past couple seasons, they've relied on the transfer portal to bring in quarterbacks. So we had Sam Hartman out there. He was transferred in. Last season led the Fighting Irish. And then this season, Riley Leonard from Duke, a very highly touted quarterback, very well regarded in the transfer portal from that very aerial attack offense at Duke, comes into Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman's system actually gets a good stable of running backs finally, like Jeremiah Love, and gets a really good set of receivers and tight ends to operate with. Unless we forget, the offensive line at Notre Dame is usually ranked well within the top. They produced some very good NFL talent over the past few years. Quentin Nelson of the Indianapolis Colts being a name that really comes to my mind in that regard. And two very different teams, because Penn State relies heavily on their running backs and their tight end, whereas Notre Dame is more of a balanced offense, right? So it's two very different quarterbacks. Christian Gray intercepts the football from Drew Allar, sets up a field goal to win the game. It was, very even throughout. And Mitch Jeter, the kicker from Notre Dame, who was 13 of 20 on the season with a season long of, I believe, 49. The number 49 sticks out in my head. He drills the 44-yard field goal to win the game. And where does Drew Allar go from here? Drew Allar recently declared that he is not going to the NFL draft. He's coming back to Penn State for his senior season. Drew Allar on the season threw for 3,327 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. Not pedestrian numbers by any means. Pretty standard, especially when you got a guy like Nick Singleton running in the backfield for you for Penn State. Penn State's running back factory. I mean, they put out Saquon Barkley recently, and now you're looking at a very similar type of running back in Nick Singleton and Katron Allen as well. Very different running back, but still a very good running back. You can see their stats right on the screen. Singleton, 15 carries for 84 yards and 3 touchdowns. He was the offense in that game. And you can see right here also, if we look at receiving, Tyler Warren had 6 catches for 75 yards, didn't produce a touchdown, but Tyler Warren is really, I would say, the 1B in this class for tight ends in the NFL draft, with tight end 1A being Colston Loveland from Michigan. And then you can't forget Harold Fannin from Bowling Green University, who I believe won the Mackey Award this past year for nation's best tight end. But we can see, like right here, Nick Singleton didn't just get it done on the ground. He also had 2 receptions for 33 yards. So let's extrapolate that. 17 touches in the game for 117 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's a pretty good stat line. And if your running back is putting up those stats on a good, well-coached Big Ten team, generally you're going to win the game. And that looked to be the case, but Drew Allar again comes up short in a playoff game. He was 12 of 23 for 135 yards and no touchdown passes. Well, maybe he had an off game. No. So Drew Allar, fun fact, did not throw for over 200 yards in any of his 3 playoff games. Again, I mean, against SMU, against Boise State, and then against Notre Dame. He does not throw for over 200 yards. So the question becomes, has Drew Allar hit a ceiling? And now, if he's hit the ceiling, is the 200 yards a game with, 2 touchdowns going to get it done for this kid, leading Penn State possibly back to the college football playoff next season? And I think a lot of quarterbacks in college, they get their NIL money, they play at a big time program, and they go to the draft no matter if they're a top 2 quarterback or a top 5 quarterback, because at that point, they've made their money in college and now they're getting ready to go to the league. I think Drew Allar is a very pedestrian quarterback. A friend of the show, Mark Rude, told me that Drew Allar is a Josh Allen Diet Cola version. And I can kind of see it. I mean, it's similar builds, kind of similar big arms, but not necessarily throwing for a lot of yards in college. If you go back and watch Josh Allen's college tape, he relied more on his legs than anything, but he also didn't have very eye-popping statistics at any given time. I think if Drew Allar goes back, Penn State definitely needs to look at the offense and their head coach. And it starts with James Franklin. James Franklin, I believe the stat is 1-8 against top 10 teams. And that's just not a record that's going to get it done, especially you're following Joe Paterno at Penn State, and Joe Paterno might not have won a shit ton of national titles, but I'm going to tell you right now, Joe Paterno was the standard of college coaching for a while. So when you have a program that kind of has a standard set for the type of coach that you have, you need the other coach to come in and do well. And I mean, I understand Bill O'Brien was in between at that time, between Franklin and Joe Paterno, but the Bill O'Brien era was so short-lived in my mind. It's really a blur that it ever happened. James Franklin, it seems like he's been there forever. And this isn't a discount James Franklin. I do think he's an effective coach for the type of team that Penn State is and the way they recruit and kind of their status in the Big Ten. But the fact of the matter is James Franklin got absolutely out-coached by Marcus Freeman, because Marcus Freeman, the head coach of Notre Dame, runs into a bit of a conundrum during the game wherein his starting quarterback, again, Riley Leonard, gets hurt. He gets thrown in concussion protocol. So they have their backup come in. And Anthony, could you pull up the stats for Notre Dame for me real quick? Because I don't want to misspeak when I speak on Steve Angeli's name. 6 of 7 for 44 yards. He got Riley Leonard wasn't in. Angeli comes in and kind of gives us a preview of what might be in the Notre Dame era. And what I saw was a very decisive and a very pinpoint accurate quarterback throwing the football. If you continue to put out running backs like Jeremiah Love, Notre Dame's going to be just fine. And they showed why they're just fine, because there's a plague of injuries at Notre Dame right now. They're starting defensive tackle, starting linebacker, starting corners. All are hurt. You have various offensive linemen down, and then their backups are now down. And there's a case of the flu going around in the Notre Dame locker room. But I don't think any of that scares Marcus Freeman, because Marcus Freeman is a consummate players coach, and Marcus Freeman gets the best out of his players. And that's why Notre Dame wins the game against Penn State, because Marcus Freeman puts the ultimate faith in his players to get things done. I mean, season on the line, guys. Like, a trip to the college football playoff on the line, or you tie with Penn State and then possibly run into an extended overtime where you might not even win. You put the ball in the foot. I won't say hands because he's a kicker, but you put the ball at the mercy of the toe of Mitch Jeter, who, again, was 13 of 20 on the season with a long of 49. I mean, that's mid-60s%. And you're going to let him kick this field goal. I understand it wasn't a 49-yarder. It was a 44-yarder that he was kicking. But, geez, oh, man. And the real unsung hero of the game, though, Anthony has him up here, Jaden Greathouse, who I don't necessarily think is the best receiver in the world, but he really did do his thing against Penn State. And Penn State has a really above average secondary. Penn State does very well in the secondary, and Anase Williams, I mean, five catches for 66 yards, making an impact, 13.2 average, more than a first down every time he catches the football. Notre Dame doesn't have a wide list of wide receivers, but geez, oh man, I mean, they were getting people involved and they were distributing the football. Mitchell Evans with 58 yards. I mean, Mitch Evans is a big boy. That's kind of crazy. I mean, again, Notre Dame and Penn State do not play the same brand of football, but it was a very entertaining game to watch. I'm very glad that I got to see most of that game and really kind of dive into what I was hoping was going to be Ohio State's next opponent. And let's get into Ohio State now. So congratulations to Notre Dame on your 27-24 win. And now we're going to talk about, guys, I'm so happy. I didn't think it was going to happen. If you remember a couple weeks ago when I was on with Nate Winchell, I predicted Ohio State to get there to play Texas, but I predicted Texas was going to win, and Texas was going to play Notre Dame in the title game, and Texas is going to win. I thought Texas was going to be your national champ. But what a back and forth game, guys. I mean, Ohio State scores in the first quarter, and then Quinn Ewers just... The crazy thing about this football game was Quinn Ewers, guys. Quinn Ewers wasn't throwing to his receivers that much or his tight end Gunnar Helm that much. Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden really weren't involved that much in the game, but he was doing these dump offs to his running backs, or the running backs were running a fly out of the backfield and they caught touchdowns that way. Like, it was absolutely crazy. Like, look at this. So Quinn Ewers, 23 of 39 for 283 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. His leading rusher, Quintravian Wisner, 17 carries for 46 yards, but go down a little bit, brother. Quintravian Wisner had 6 catches for 42 yards. And then Jaden Blue, the backup or the 1B running back for Texas, had 5 catches for 59 yards and 2 tutties, but he also made an impact on the ground. Texas couldn't get the ball to anybody outside of their running backs really. And Matthew Golden, 2 catches for 51 yards. Matthew Golden was actually unfortunately hurt in the early stages of, I believe, the first quarter. He rolled his ankle, it looked like, and the Texas offense never really recovered. But you also can't make the excuse that Texas lost because its number 1 receiver was taken out of the game, because Ohio State's number 1 wide receiver, Jeremiah Smith, was blanket covered in a 3-3 the entire game. Jeremiah Smith made absolutely no impact on the game. You had to go to Carnell Tate, who got, I think it was like 87 yards receiving. It was 87 yards receiving. Emeka Egbuka had 5 catches, and G. Scott had 5 catches. Jeremiah Smith, who got robbed of Freshman of the Year, despite breaking every freshman receiving record that Ohio State had 1 catch for 3 yards. And that's not an indictment on Will Howard for not getting him the football. That is an accolade and props to Texas's defense. Texas defense was so good all year. I mean, they blew out Michigan, who beat Ohio State. Like, this defense is at Texas is real good. What I mean, like, they're fast, they're rangy, they can disguise well. I mean, they were all over the field. I really did think Ohio State might lose the game. I mean, Will Howard, 24 of 33 for 289 yards and 1 touchdown, and he did have a big run, a very big run, but he Daniel Jonesed it and tripped over his own feet, unfortunately. If he wouldn't have done that, he's gone for a touchdown. But to end the first half, after Quinn Ewers leads the team down the field, Will Howard drops back to pass and does like a dump off to Trevion Henderson, who takes it like, I think it was 51 yards or so to the house and scored another touchdown to put us up 14-7. Which is absolutely awesome. I was so excited about that. Thank God for Keyshawn Judkins for coming in, scoring 2 touchdowns for the team. But what would prove to be the go-ahead touchdown when he barrels into the end zone. That was absolutely amazing as well. I've really enjoyed watching all season that 2-headed monster of Trevion Henderson and Keyshawn Judkins. They're not putting up eye-popping stats by any means. And I think that's attributed to 2 reasons. The offensive line's been hurt all year. That's been a patch and play type offensive line. And also, when you have 2 alpha running back ones in a more spread offense like Ohio State runs, you're not going to get 1,000 yards every time. You're not going to get, your 14, 15 touchdowns like you generally would in college ball if you're a running back one. But we've seen this with Ohio State. Trevion was just part of a monster backfield with Mayan Williams recently, as recent as last year. I mean, they were running back 1 and 2, just killing it for a couple of years together. It was really crazy. And Trevion always plays so well when it's running back by committee, I feel, because you can keep him warm and then not exert him. And then moments like they needed him to come up big in, such as when he gets that dump off from Howard that turns into a score, he's ready to do stuff like that. You can employ 2 running backs and have them impact the game in different ways. It's very nice to see. And Will Howard and Quinn Ewers had pretty identical stats for the most part. Those 2 quarterbacks played very well in that game. It was a very back and forth game. Will Howard actually 0-3 versus Texas in his career. This is Texas's first year in the SEC. And for years, they were in the Big 12. And Kansas State, where Will Howard's from originally before he transferred into Ohio State, played at Kansas State. 0-3 against Texas. And this was a big thing for him to beat Texas. But it also, Quinn Ewers, it was a big game for him because Quinn Ewers, when he reclassified to the class of 2020, so he became a senior when he was actually a junior, committed to Ohio State to be their quarterback. He transfers out after a year at Ohio State and goes to Texas. So it'd be poetic if he could beat his former team that he never started for. Very, very big storylines going into the game for both quarterbacks. Can you get the Texas pimple off your back? Can I beat my old team that I wasn't good enough to start for? You know, two very good storylines going into that. I feel it really played a big part in how important the game was to both quarterbacks, not just because it was a thing to get to the game to get to the national title, but because it was such a big storyline. And to end the game, Jack Sawyer comes up with a huge strip sack fumble recovery. That was absolutely awesome. To see that happen, he never gave up. He never surrendered. He didn't, what's the word I want to use? He never doubted that he could score. He just did it. And that really embodied the entire postseason for Jack Sawyer. He has affected the game in so many different ways coming into the playoff. And I think it was really the Michigan game, losing that and not letting the guys plant the flag on the field, that really solidified, hey, I got to kick it into more than beast mode now, because we lost to Michigan. We need to salvage the season and go win a national title. Comes out and wrecks Tennessee, comes out and absolutely dominates the line of scrimmage against Oregon, and then ends the game with the biggest play in Ohio State college football playoff history. Absolutely amazing. And then, but Texas is still in it. You know what I mean? They're still in it, but driving down the field, Quinn Ewers drops back to pass, throws it. Caleb Downs intercepts it. What a better way to end the game than Caleb Downs coming in, doing what he does best, intercepting the football, and taking us to the national title game. I'm so excited for it. It's going to be on January 20th. So that's next Monday. I'm going to get with my predictions with you guys in a little bit, but I do want to let you know that next Monday, the cut will not be going live at our normally scheduled time due to the Ohio State game. So we're working out right now. Maybe we're going to have a Sunday show coming Sunday. We will keep you guys abreast of that as we determine when that will happen. But did want to let you know we will not be live next Monday in honor of the Ohio State Buckeyes game that's going to be going on. Very excited for it. Ohio State versus Notre Dame for the big one in Atlanta, Georgia. So we've got a bit of a big game coming up. And I mean, what really more is there to say? Like, if you're a Buckeye fan, you haven't seen a national title in 10 years, since 2014, when Cardell Jones came in and worked his magic and brought us to the promised land, despite all the odds stacked against us. It was a beautiful thing. It was one of the best championships I've ever seen. I put it up there with the Cleveland Cavs winning it all, but I put it a little bit above that because Ohio State football means so much to me. I didn't go to Ohio State. I didn't get to wear scarlet and gray as my alma mater's colors or anything like that, but I've always been a lifelong fan. Ohio State has always been that team to me that embodies what it means to be tough, what it means to be physical, what it means to change. I mean, we changed so dynamically in my lifetime. I mean, for some of your younger viewers, you remember like Jim Tressel, how it was a real ground and pound style offense, real running back predicated. Then Urban Meyer comes around and we transition without even a second thought into a more speed offense with more athletes all over the field. And then we changed to Ryan Day, who I don't really agree with his offense all that often, but Ryan Day has the luxury of having a guy like Brian Hartline who can go out and recruit offensive players like none other and adapt with the times. Lands the number one receiver in the country, Jeremiah Smith. Have had guys like Marvin Harrison Jr., Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, KJ Hill, Terry McLaurin. Just amazing receiver. I didn't even list them all because there's so many of them that have come out. But we've also had such dynamically different quarterbacks, going back to Terrell Pryor, to Will Howard now, to Kyle McCord before him, and then before him, CJ Stroud, Justin Fields. I mean, so many different quarterbacks, guys, so many legends at Ohio State. And now we don't necessarily have a legend quarterback, but it's giving me Justin Zwick vibes. It's really giving me early 2000s Ohio State vibes in terms of these guys weren't necessarily legends going into the game, but they're going to become legends should they win. I'm very excited to see. It's the Catholics versus the Fruit Trees, baby. The Irish versus the Buckeyes, and it's going to be so awesome. The rumor is they're going to be bringing back their heritage jerseys with the fat silver stripe on the side. Praise the Lord if that's true. Praise the Lord if that's true. Such a throwback uniform, such a great uniform. If we could win the title in that game wearing those jerseys, that'd be so special to see. Such an homage to former great teams. But I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk. Notre Dame, as we've seen, is a very good team. They lost to Northern Illinois early in the year. It was a definite upset. But since then, the running game has become so much stronger. Riley Leonard has become he was already a great quarterback, but he became such a decisive leader on the field. And his offensive line is just elite. And I think Ohio State's going to have a tough time breaking through that offensive line initially. Jack Sawyer and JTT are going to try their damnedest, and Tyleik Williams is an absolute tank going up the middle at that nose tackle position. But I really think guys like Jaden Greathouse, if you get in man coverage with them, like Davison Igamanusa, I think is how you say his name, if he's trailing him, it's not going to be good. Buckeyes can't play man to save their life, it seems lately. Caleb Downs, I've seen him playing more of that roam spot on the field. I really think instead of being a roamer against this team, he needs to stay in back and provide help over the middle and over the top, because Notre Dame can definitely stretch the field. But I don't think Notre Dame's corners can hang with us, especially Ibuka, Tate, and after his come out game this past week, and Jeremiah Smith. I don't think it's a possibility. And we can't forget G. Scott running over the middle, running them slants, them drags, little post route. He's elite when it comes to that. And we saw that against Texas when he was fighting for every additional yard. I do think it's going to be a back and forth game initially. And then I think in the fourth quarter, the killer instinct comes out and Ohio State pulls away. I think it's going to be 28-21 as the score. Now that I'm sitting here and thinking about it, I think Will Howard makes some mistakes like he did against Texas, but I don't think they're as egregious of mistakes. And I think the offensive line wakes up a little bit. They were very lackluster, lackadaisical to begin the game and didn't really turn it on until the mid-third quarter. And there was a lot of penalties being thrown against them for false start and everything with offensive line. I don't foresee that continuing. I don't think Justin Fry is a very good line coach anyway, but I think he's going to do enough to wake them guys up. And a Jim Knowles defense is a great defense. I'm scared of losing him this offseason. I think there might be a team that swoops in a little bit later and tries to grab him. But I do think it's going to be a 28-21 ball game. The Ohio State Buckeyes come out as your national champions. It's going to be beautiful to see. I really pray that this is what happens. And then the Ryan Day chatter will definitely start no matter what, win or lose. Like, does he stay? Does he go? I think if he loses, I think they fire him. I really do. But I think if he wins, I think he's out. I think he wins us a title and he says, you know what? I did everything I could here. I won a title, but I just think the pressure of coaching at Ohio State's a little too much for him. You got to be a special type of guy to coach at Ohio State. And I think Ryan Day has proved he is a special type of guy. But, I mean, he looks so stressed over there at any given time. And the media is always coming for his head. I mean, fans are coming for his head. I had been coming for his head for a while because even though we're in the national title game now, I mean, a loss to Michigan 4 years in a row just ain't cutting it, dude. I'd rather lose every game than lose and beat Michigan than go undefeated but lose to Michigan last week of the season. I hate shit like that. Like, I hate them. They're a poverty team, and they had no business beating us this past year. But I mean, really, it was the best thing that could happen, because without losing to Michigan, we're in the conference title game against Oregon, and then you're just playing an additional game. You got to play 5 games to win the national title instead of 4 at that point. For seeding purposes, it's just tough. Yeah, but 28-21, Notre Dame, lock it in. We'll see you guys next week at either Sunday, or we'll figure it out. We'll get with you, but we'll see you for a recap of the college football championship game then. And joining us will be our buddy Nate Winchell after the recap. That'll be fun. Going to be excited to do that. So lock it in, and we'll see you guys then. But before we move to our NFL playoff section, again, I'd like to thank Aquendo Productions and Cracked Repair for always coming through for us with the sponsorship. Visit crackedrepair.com or visit them in the Ashtabula Town Square for all your electronic repair needs. All right, so let's get to the NFL playoffs. We had 5 games over the weekend, and I'm not really going to do them in sequential order. I've got a lot of notes written down here, so we're going to talk a little bit about it, and we're going to start with me taking a sip of soda. We're going to start with the Chargers versus the Texans. The Chargers fall to the Texans 12-32. What a game for Justin Herbert. God, that was painful to watch. He was 14 of 32 for 242 yards, 1 touchdown, and 4 interceptions. I mean, absolutely painful. And then the running game, which Jim Harbaugh is good at, guys. Like, Jim Harbaugh, I mean, I don't really think he's all that as a coach, but I'll tell you what, Jim Harbaugh can coach a rush game. And I mean, 50 combined yards, I don't think that that's going to get it done when you're playing any type of game, but definitely a playoff game. But look at the boy Ladd McConkey going off, 9 catches, 197 yards and a touchdown. If Ladd McConkey's your 1A on a team, you got to get another player to supplement him at wide receiver. His next closest guy, Will Dicely, had 2 catches for 16 yards. I mean, it's just not going to get it done, guys. Quentin Johnson, excuse me, who was drafted in the first round like 2 years ago out of TCU, he got held to no catches for no yards. I mean, what is that? And he's a big boy too. He's 6'4". He's a big target, and you're just not letting him impact the game. Whereas a guy like CJ Stroud has Joe Mixon, who was brought over from the Bengals this past offseason to improve the run game. And Joe Mixon actually has, I believe it was a 17-yard touchdown run to seal everything at the end of the game. He punctuated that after Justin Herbert and the Chargers offense and special teams had a disastrous array of plays. Eric Murray starts the party off by intercepting Justin Herbert to the tune of a 38-yard interception return touchdown. So that's not great. And then you get back on offense, you're driving down the field, you're not looking too bad. But then you got to elect to just take the points. So you're going to be kicking an extra point after you score. D'Angelo Ross from the Texans blocks the extra point and runs it back for a conversion. I mean, you're not coaching to win the game at that point. You're coaching because you're afraid. The Texans were all over them the entire game. And it looked like there could be life in the fourth quarter for the Chargers, but they don't do anything. Derek Stingley with 2 interceptions. Like, Stingley's an elite corner already, and he's only been in the league 2 years. And I would say he's on the level of Pat Surtain and Denzel Ward, but you can't let that kid impact the game with, I think it was like 4 or 5 tackles and 2 interceptions. He's impacting in so many ways. You're not figuring out any way to neutralize him. Throwing away from his side of the field, trying to open up the offense by doing more in the run game. Justin Herbert's got legs, and I'm not saying that hyperbole. What I'm saying is Justin Herbert can run. Like, he's an elite quarterback, but he knows how to use his legs when he needs to. You couldn't let him do it? Like, I don't even see a rushing attempt for Justin Herbert out there. You can't have 18 rushes in the game for 50 yards and expect to even have a semblance of a chance of winning. And that's the Chargers' downfall right now. I mean, the Chargers improved their offensive line the past few seasons. They went out, they tried to protect their franchise quarterback. They invested in a run game for him because J.K. Dobbins, despite the knee surgeries, proved that he's still an elite running back. But you don't address your receiving core, and you let them all leave. You let Mike Williams and Keenan Allen leave in the offseason. I don't understand how you do that and not get replacements across the board, even veteran replacements. Juju Smith-Schuster was available. I know he's not the sexy pick, but him, KJ Osborne, Mac Hollins, these guys are all free agents that went to contending teams, and they're doing well. Shoot, man, the Panthers are a poverty franchise. You could have thrown a 4th-round pick out there for Adam Thielen. You could have done it. I mean, I know he's old, but he'd still do the job for you. So, like, where do the Chargers go from here? I mean, the Texans advance. They're going to the next round. They make it out of the wild card round. They're going to the division champions. I mean, I think it starts. The Chargers have got to go out and they have to address the receiving core. They have to. You can't be feeding Ladd McConkey and then not having anyone to supplement him. And not just that, you don't even have like a real tight end presence anymore. It's just kind of sad. So now we go to the Steelers as they fall to the Ravens 14-28. And boy, let me tell you, Derek King Henry ran wild. 26 carries, 186 yards, 2 touchdowns. The man was running like a man possessed that game. But you know who wasn't doing anything that game? TJ Watt. Another game where he doesn't record a stat. And this is the person that people were saying should have been Defensive Player of the Year going into the season. And a lot of people said he should still be Defensive Player of the Year. TJ Watt got exposed as a fraud. He is not the best outside linebacker in the NFL. Absolutely not. And if he was elite, he would have figured out a way to impact the game. But all I saw was TJ Watt sitting on the sideline and bitching the entire time. Typical Steeler. That's okay. It's okay. We won't blame them. They don't know any better. But you know who did impress me with the Steelers? And that would be Mr. Russell Wilson. Russ went 20 of 29 for 270 yards and 2 touchdowns. Absolutely inept offense. Came out in the second half and tried to make something happen. Yes, Russ makes boneheaded plays. Yes, he has a head case of a wide receiver, as is tradition in Pittsburgh, being thrown the football to. George Pickens, 5 catches, and it was for, I think, around 85 yards and a touchdown. He ain't bad, but he's just fucking wild. He's wild. He's a wild card. You don't know what you're going to get with him. And I don't think that George Pickens is ever fully engaged in the game. I think he's more fully engaged in who he's going to beat. And I mean that like on an individual level. Like, is he going to beat the corner or not? What is he doing to impact the play when he's taken out of the play? And all he does is get frustrated and push people around. That's kind of shitty behavior. I still like the kid. I think that he's a good wide receiver that would do better on a team with a younger, stronger armed quarterback throwing him the football. I think he'd be perfect in Los Angeles, actually. He would be perfect next to Ladd McConkey in Los Angeles. But neither here nor there. The Steelers end up losing the game. That steel curtain elite defense that we've seen from the Steelers. And guys, I know I said like fuck the Steelers and stuff. It's really a joke. I mean, I'm an NFL fan first and foremost. I respect that the Steelers are a well-ran organization. I respect that their coach is one of the greatest to ever do it. I respect that they bring in high-level talent time after time after time again. They are a consummately well-ran franchise. They are, and I hate saying it, but I'd rather praise the Steelers than acknowledge Michigan on any given day. And I'll tell you what, some of these guys that they have on Pittsburgh, guys like Cam Hayward, Ohio State boy right there, Keanu Benton, a defensive lineman from Wisconsin, young man who likes to clog up the lane, much like Casey Hampton used to. Joey Porter Jr., son of a Steelers legend on that team. They Minkah Fitzpatrick, who could forget him, the guy that fucking ruined Nick Chubb's life. They're all very good players, and it's a well-ran team, but you're not going to win when you have Russell Wilson out there making the decisions that he makes. He isn't the Russell Wilson from Seattle anymore who could bail himself out with his legs and had a glut of receivers and a decent tight end to throw the ball. Not saying that Pat Freiermuth isn't a decent tight end, but he also doesn't have the luxury of a Marshawn Lynch anymore. He has Najee Harris, who has six rushes for like 17 yards. I mean, you still have a good offensive line, but you don't have the weapons that you had in Seattle, and you were never the same in Denver. You came back and revitalized yourself a bit in Pittsburgh, but that's what a culture change and that's what a class organization does. They bring out the best in you. But Russ did have a career revival, but I don't think he's the guy to lead them to that next step. I think the Steelers are a quarterback away, and that's where I was going to say where the Steelers go from here. They need to get a good quarterback. And a lot of you are going to call me crazy, but Aaron Rodgers would be perfect for the Steelers. He would be 1,000% the right fit for that team. Aaron Rodgers, even though his team didn't do well this past year, the team was in flux. They lose their head coach. The defense is making some changes. They're integrating Devontae Adams into the offense. Breece Hall still is a walking injury. You go to Pittsburgh, you can change a lot of the on-field success with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who understands a culture, who understands what it takes to be a winner, who understands that his football days are numbered and he needs to give it all now to win a title. Unfortunately, it didn't come in New York like I thought it would, but it might come for them in Pittsburgh. In my mind, Aaron Rodgers is the greatest passing quarterback of all time. He's one of my 3 favorite players of all time. I don't rank him as the greatest quarterback. I view that as Michael Vick because of the way Vick changed the game. But I would put Aaron Rodgers at number 2 on my list. Just an elite quarterback. You go and get him, the Steelers could make a Super Bowl run next year. Unfortunately, it ends for them now, but Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, and the Ravens move on, and it's going to I don't even know who they play next, but it's going to be a hell of a game. Lamar, 16 of 21 for 175 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's finding guys like crazy, and he's integrating people into the offense that haven't been integrated really for a while. Isaiah Likely, who's the backup tight end out of Coastal Carolina, takes snaps away from Mark Andrews this past night because Likely leads the team in receiving with 53 yards the other night. That was crazy. Rashad Bateman, who's a boomer bust, he was kind of mid that night, which is surprising because he's either a boom or bust. He caught 2 catches and got a touchdown, and Justice Hill, the backup running back, catches for a touchdown. Great game for them. Very, very good game. The next game, I was very disappointed. Broncos-Bills. Bo's my favorite rookie quarterback. Bo Nix, my favorite rookie quarterback. I've loved watching that kid play all year. They lose to a score of 7-31. Here's the question. Your lone bright spot on offense was Troy Franklin, who had 2 catches for 54 yards and a touchdown. Cortland Sutton, non-existent again. No one on that offense was going to score anything. So how about that vaunted defense steps up? They couldn't, because no one can stop Josh Allen. Josh Allen, 20 of 26 for 272 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then gets his running back James Cook involved, who carried the ball 23 times for 120 yards and a touchdown. Josh Allen also gets people involved that aren't usually involved. 3 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown for the Ohio State boy, Curtis Samuel. Beautiful to see. Matt Collins gets a 19-yard catch, gets that costly penalty by stepping over the defensive back. Didn't prove too costly because they scored a touchdown that drive, but it was a bit of a uncharacteristic moment for the usually zen Matt Collins. No one is stopping Josh Allen right now, and I don't think anybody can. Josh Allen might be the best quarterback in the league right now. I don't want to hear the Lamar Jackson arguments. Lamar's a great quarterback, but no one does more with less than Josh Allen, and he showed that by the way he distributed the football, the way he impacted the game in the air and on the ground. 8 rushes for 46 yards, but also gets Ty Johnson, a backup running back, involved. 9 rushes for 44 yards and lets James Cook eat as well. He runs a very free-flowing, very almost unpredictable offense where you don't know where he's going to go with the ball at any given time because he doesn't have that diva number 1 receiver. His 1A for the year was Khalil Shakir. Khalil had like 6 catches for 61 yards, but then they trade for Amari Cooper midseason from the Browns. Cooper only has 2 catches for 8 yards. Amari Cooper's a big game player. Cooper wasn't a big game player yesterday, but the Bills still find a way to win and win by 4 scores. They won by 3 touchdowns and a field goal. Like, pretty crazy to see. I don't think anyone can stop the Bills, and I don't think anybody can stop Josh Allen. The Broncos, where do they go from here? They need to upgrade that receiving core, and they need to get a staunch player in the backfield to complement Bo Nix. I understand the running back by committee, Javonte, Jaleel McLaughlin, Audric Estime. McLaughlin and Williams have both been fantasy darlings the past couple of years, like in respective years. I don't think it's fair to employ a running back by committee necessarily with someone like Bo Nix. I think you really need to get an established running back behind him. And it would never happen, but Joe Mixon would be perfect. But you need to go out and you need to find that true number 1 receiver for Bo Nix, whether it's in the draft, Luther Burden, or his brother, Bo Nix's brother, Tez Franklin. One of those guys, man, or Tez Johnson, excuse me. One of those guys could really come in and make a difference and launch the Broncos to the next level. The Broncos don't need much, but they do need a new receiver. Next game we're going to go over, the second to last game I'm going to go over tonight, was the Packers-Eagles. The Packers lose 10-22. And it really made me think last night. I was looking at a few things. So the Packers' top 3 receivers, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Nix, and Romeo Doubs. They're the top 3 receivers. Last night, they combined total between the 3 of them. This is combined. 8 catches for 98 yards. Meanwhile, Josh Jacobs carries the ball 18 times for 81 yards and a touchdown. Jordan Love throws 3 picks. Meanwhile, the Eagles have a guy like Saquon Barkley who ran 25 times for 119 yards, didn't get a touchdown, screwed a lot of people's parlays up, mine included. Jalen Hurts ran 6 times for 36 yards and also had 2 passing touchdowns on very efficient passing numbers. Dallas Goedert, who I told you guys last week would be a fantasy darling for next year, lock that in still. But Goedert had a touchdown catch, and Jahan Dotson, who they got midseason from the Commanders, had a touchdown catch. Impacting the game in many different ways. The Eagles are a very confusing team. Their offense almost reminds me of like a college type offense, but it's effective, and their defense is amazing, forcing the very efficient and normally turnover free Jordan Love into 3 interceptions last night. Who do the Packers have on offense besides Josh Jacobs? I'm not talking about Jordan Love, because the problem isn't Jordan Love. They got Josh Jacobs, and that's it. Their top 3 receivers, who we've all been excited about at different times because all of them have shown flashes of brilliance, are just that. They're flashes. They're not established. The Packers need to go out. The Packers need to find a true number 1 receiver. Tyreek Hill has already said that he's thinking about leaving Miami. If you could get Tyreek Hill in Green Bay, you could have something real special and a real field stretcher for Jordan Love. That'd be absolutely perfect. Or, I don't think Deebo Samuel wants to be on the 49ers anymore. Trade for Deebo and then get that versatile weapon on your team for Jordan Love. That'd be absolutely awesome. But the Packers need, just like the Broncos, to go out and get a true number 1 receiver and stop messing around with these committee guys, because it's not working, and we saw that last night as the Eagles advance. Final game of the night, and this is the one that broke my heart. The Commanders beat the Buccaneers 23-20. Jaden Daniels continues to do his rookie magic and lead his Commanders to wins. And I feel really bad for Baker Mayfield. Baker is a former Browns quarterback. He's someone I did not like and then came around to like later. Very efficient night. He's 15 of 18 for 185 yards and 2 touchdowns and rips off a couple big runs. He had 7 rushes for 23 yards, but that's not the full story, because in the NFL, when you get sacked, that comes off of your passing yards. Okay? So Baker had quite a few more passing yards, but he was getting, the backfield was getting penetrated bad. The offensive line was almost non-existent at points, and they were having Bucky Irving pass protect against Bobby Wagner, who is a legendary linebacker. Mike Evans did his thing again, 7 catches, 92 yards. That was awesome to see. Mike Evans was impacting the game. It's really awesome to see, because Mike Evans, you know that they're throwing him the football because Chris Godwin's hurt. So an elite corner like Marshawn Lattimore, who also hates Mike Evans, like they knuckle up every time they see each other. For Evans to impact the way the game that he did was absolutely astounding. I feel bad because Baker had one of his classic blunders at the end of the game. It seems like Baker is a very determined quarterback and he's learning from his mistakes, but I think you're in your 6th year in the league now, bud. You need to start not just learning, but implementing the rectification of the mistakes, because you guys could have won that game. You should have won that game. But the Commanders are led by Jaden Daniels, rookie from LSU, gunslinger of a quarterback, just absolute gunslinger of a quarterback. And no one has benefited more from that than Terry McLaurin. Scary Terry from Ohio State, OHIO. Mr. 83, Terry McLaurin. He had 7 catches for 89 yards and a touchdown last night. Terry McLaurin has done so well in his career with bad quarterbacks, and now he has a good quarterback that's getting him the football. You're seeing what Scary Terry can do, and it is frightening. Dyami Brown from North Carolina, who was on my fantasy radar years ago and never really developed, had a breakout night, 5 catches, 89 yards for a touchdown. Absolutely insane. Jaden Daniels' offense is built around his strengths. You got a traditional running back in Brian Robinson, and then you got one of my favorite fantasy players of all time in Austin Eckler, who is also coming out of the backfield. Eckler had 2 catches for 23 yards yesterday, and also impacted in the run game as well. Jaden Daniels just has weapons all around him, and he's able to plug and play them the right way, and that leads to the wins. When you have such a young quarterback that's doing so well this quickly, you kind of wonder, are they going to go far in the playoffs? And I think that they will, because Dan Quinn is a fantastic coach. He didn't get the fair end of the stick at his last coaching stop, unfortunately, but he's getting his fair shake right now. And he's letting his team do what they want to do, what they're good at, and not forcing the issue with anything that they're not effective at. It's very nice to see an older head coach learn new tricks, right? And that's letting Jaden Daniels run wild when he needs to. That's letting Jaden Daniels make his mistakes, because Jaden Daniels learns from the mistakes immediately and doesn't commit them again. Buccaneers could have won that game. They come up just short. And you wonder, where do the Buccaneers go from here? It's not replacing Baker Mayfield, even though last year against the Lions, he throws an interception, and this time he's the direct cause of the loss as well with his blunder. But Baker's still an effective quarterback. I think now you have your running back of the future in Bucky Irving. You still have Mike Evans, who's going to be legit. You have Cade Otton, who's come on as his own. He was the number 12 overall ranked fantasy football tight end this past year. You're going to get Chris Godwin back next year. And Jalen McMillan is also coming on. I think now, if you're the Buccaneers, you got to focus on your offensive line. Tristan Wirfs, the left tackle, is absolutely prolific, but outside of him, you're having these older guys or these more career backup guys come in and become starters. You need to go out and you need to get someone who can actually anchor the right side of the offensive line at that guard or that right tackle spot, and make it so that the running lanes are opened up a little bit more. Because if the Buccaneers can involve Bucky Irving more and lean on him a little bit more and not depend on Baker as much, the Buccaneers are going to go very far. You also might want to look in the second or third round at replacing Mike Evans eventually, because he's getting old. He's in his young, very early 30s, but he's due for a career drop-off. The Buccaneers are a special case, because I think the Buccaneers stood the best chance to beat the Detroit Lions this year. I think now, since the Bucs are out, the Lions are definitely going to the Super Bowl. I got a Super Bowl prediction after Wild Card Weekend, just based on what I saw. I don't think anyone in the NFC can beat the Lions, so I'm slating them in. I think the Chiefs are frauds, and I truly believe that the Bills will go against the Lions in the Super Bowl. I don't know who's going to win, but either way, I win because I like both teams. I think that they're both pretty good. But yeah, so we recapped the NFL playoffs from this past weekend. Right now, the Vikings and the Rams are currently on. I don't know the score or anything like that. Anth, can you actually check on that? What's that looking like? Holy shit. 3-17. That's not great. I mean, it's not horrible, but it's not great. Listen, a very wise man that I work with, Joe Streets, told me today, go Rams, baby. And I'm kind of into that now. Vikings, if anyone who knows me knows, the Vikings have been my second favorite team since I was a child. So that's kind of a painful thing to see, especially with the season that they had this year. Sam Darnold stepping in for J.J. McCarthy, integrating with Justin Jefferson very easily and quickly was great to see. I mean, they had a 14-3 record this year. Absolutely fantastic in a very tough NFC North. I thought the Vikings might pull it off against the Rams, but it's looking tough right now. Rams are a solid team. Matt Stafford, you can never count that guy out. Consummate professional, great quarterback. He's a winner. Really nice to see him doing something good, but I hate that it's against the Vikings. That kind of sucks. But well, the Vikings got the ball now, so maybe they'll score. Who knows? Maybe they'll throw a bomb to Justin Jefferson and blow this bitch wide open. I don't know. But thank you guys for tuning in. You have all made the cut. We're very thankful that you joined in. Don't forget to visit crackedrepair.com for all your cell phone repair needs. And we'll see you next week. Stay tuned for the date and time so that you can join us. But again, we will be taking next Monday off in honor of the college football championship game. Have a great night, guys, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.